Good morning, everybody. It's just about 10 o'clock and time for us to get started. We're really glad that you could join us here. We're scheduled for this webinar to run from 10 o'clock until 11 o'clock. We have a lot to cover, a lot of good stuff, so we want to get started on time. I know that there will be quite a few people joining us as we get started, but hopefully they won't miss anything too exciting in terms of the content. A couple important notes before we get started. One, everybody's phone has been muted, which is in the best interest of everybody else because there tends to be a lot of outside noise as we do these programs. So if you do have questions, and please, by all means, anytime we do anything at Employers Group, our favorite thing is questions. So we encourage you to ask questions early and often. On the right side of your screen, just a little bit more than midway down, there should be an area for typing in questions. If you type questions, comments, or suggestions into there, we will address them as soon as possible. So by all means, please do take advantage of that. Don't hesitate to let us know if you're having trouble hearing or there's any outside noise or distractions. Let us know that as well because we may not be aware of it over here. And if it's bothering you, it's probably bothering some other people as well. A couple of other housekeeping notes. This program qualifies for 1 hour of HRCI recertification, general recertification credit. All participants will receive from us next week a copy of the certificate indicating the 1 hour of credit. Also, this program will be available, and this will be interesting for anybody who has not joined us yet. I'll remind everybody of this again before we wrap today. On the Employers Group website, which is employersgroup.com, this program will be posted in its entirety for viewing later on. That should be up, we're hoping, by the end of this week. That should be available. So if you love this so much that you just can't get enough of it, you can find it and have it forever and ever. We're going to have some fun this morning discussing a topic that sometimes is not always exactly top of mind with human resources. Yet, if you think about it, whenever employee satisfaction is surveyed or measured, whenever cost control relative to HR is discussed, whenever serious threats to organizational stability are identified, we find today's topic, safety in the workplace, is pretty much always front and center. So over the next hour, we're going to identify some real, workable ways in which HR can and should be a driving force behind workplace safety. A good safety program is measured in much, much more than just improved XMODs. A good safety program really is a critical component of any comprehensive employee relations strategy. So that's really what we want to work on today is identifying how safety should be and can be a critical component of your employee relations strategy. Our presenter today is a good friend of Employers Group and is well known to many of our members and has been for quite some time. Mr. Joseph P. Stevens, better known as Joe, is the founder and president of Bridge Safety Consultants, a consulting group that helps companies eliminate injuries and significantly reduce the costs involved in workers' compensation. So obviously Joe's role with his clients involves some very, very serious ROI. As we'll hear this morning, Joe accomplishes this through a unique behavior-based safety program. Often that is complemented by advice and counseling on the workers' comp system and how it works and how claims impact premiums and what measures employers can take to minimize their costs. Joe had, in previous lives, Joe had responsibility for managing workers' comp as an executive for many years. He received his business training at Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson, and in recognition of his achievements and his expertise, Joe, I guess the pinnacle of Joe's career has been having been chosen numerous times by Employers Group to conduct our seminars for our members on workers' comp. Paling in comparison to that would be some of his other accomplishments, such as being appointed to Governor Schwarzenegger's task force for workers' comp reform. He was also appointed to Insurance Commissioner Garamendi's task force to revamp workers' comp in California, and he was honored as the Success Story of the Year by the Los Angeles chapter of SCORE in conjunction with the Small Business Administration. I think we're in for a really, really fascinating program today. We are promising 10 steps to a stronger safety culture. And guess what? I've seen the presentation. There are 10 steps there. So I'm going to turn it over now to Joe, and we look forward to hearing your comments and your questions as we go forward.
Thank you, Bill. And it's a pleasure to be with everyone this morning, and a pleasure to be part of Employers Group's growing commitment to safety and safety culture. As Bill said, it's an incredibly important part of the culture of any company. And I hope to give you lots of ideas this morning, maybe not divine revelations, but ideas. All of you will be doing some of the 10 steps that we'll talk about this morning. I hope that I'll give you additional steps, additional ideas, and perhaps some mind-expanding parts of things that you're already doing that will allow you to do them even more effectively. So let's start with the culture of safety and what a safety culture is. A safety culture exists when employees accept responsibility for safety and the results show it. It's as simple as that. Now, the challenge is, how do you get them to accept that responsibility? How do you get them to take responsibility? Safety has to be very visible in the company. It can't be something that you believe in, that you want, that everybody knows to be important, but doesn't get conveyed to the employees. I believe that on this morning. A quick question, can I get those to drop down one after another the way it was set up originally? Okay, sorry for the brief pause. Bill gave an introduction to me and my company. We started 9 years ago, and we're a little bit different than most safety companies in that our main focus isn't to help you with lockout, tagout, or even forklift training. It is to examine the safety culture, give you suggestions and ideas on how you can strengthen the big picture of the safety culture. Governor Schwarzenegger has a mixed record. I guess that's about as kind as we can get to the governor, the ex-governor. But the one thing he did right was workers' comp reform. SB 899 made a dramatic difference, as you all know. Rates are down something like 70% from the 2004 high, and I was a proud member of that task force that gave him recommendations. He kept narrowing it down. He started, give me your 10 most important things, and finally your 3 most important things, and finally your most important thing, and that was medical control. And I think, as we all know, that's made a tremendous difference. So I'm pleased with that. Bill told you the rest, and we'll roll on from here. Why is safety culture important? And there are really 3 main reasons that I boiled it down to. The first is cost. The cost of workers' comp is huge, a big line item, but the good news is you can control it. It is something that absolutely positively can be changed and improved through your actions. Second main reason is it impacts morale of the employees. And how difficult is it to affect morale? How difficult is it to improve the morale of your employees? Safety culture is a way to do that. It's a foundation to your company. And once you have that foundation in place, you have a much better chance of having high morale in the company and all the benefits that come from that. And the third and most important reason is that you prevent injuries, and injuries can be terrible. I'll give you an example a little bit later in the presentation of a company that almost got knocked out of business. They were doing all the right things, a wonderfully progressive company, wonderfully profitable company, but they were a little lax on safety, and it almost knocked them out of business. Nobody wants someone to suffer a serious injury. You would not trade an arm or a leg to make productivity goals. You've got to convey that message to the folks that work for you. We start out with this basic truth. You cannot make people be safe. It's a behavior issue. You can tell them to be safe, you can put things in place, but you can't change their behavior yourself. They have to do that. An example of cost and cost control and the impact you can have on the cost of a company through injuries and injury reduction. This is a large poultry distributor, and while rates changed and thus the dollars laid out change year to year, if we assume flatline dollars, their basic premium was $500,000. If their X-mod was 1.00, their workers' comp premium would have been $500,000. At 273, their peak in 2006, that premium became $1,365,000. Keep in mind, they're not getting any better insurance coverage for this. It's absolutely the same as a company with an X-mod of 100. It's just the result of injuries. In today's X-mod calculation, frequency counts more than severity. Slight change over the last year and a half. So you've got to really keep your eye on frequency. But here's a company that was profitable, doing a lot of good things, but they took their eye off the ball, and the injury count went up and up and up. And now they're paying $1,365,000. By revamping their whole safety program, their approach to safety, they put in a safety achievement program. They did all the right things. Within 4 years, they'd reduced that X-mod from 273 to 73. And of course, $1,365,000 goes down to $365,000. So a direct line savings of $1 million. Imagine cutting 75% off your workers' comp premium. You know, your premium, the basic calculation is your rate classification times the payroll you have in that classification. That's your basic premium, but that then gets multiplied by your X-mod. So the lower your X-mod, the more money you're going to save. Second example is a smaller company. Basic premium was $200,000, and again, they let it get out of control, ended up with an X-mod of 186. That drove their $200,000 premium to $372,000, just because they had a few more injuries. It doesn't take a lot. You're being compared to other companies within your industry. It doesn't take a lot more injuries to drive it up. At 186, their premium went from $200,000 to $372,000. Again, 3-year period. They did all the right things. X-mod's down to 70, premium down to $140,000, a terrific savings of $232,000 just by reducing injuries, just by putting in a safety culture that the employees bought into. I think a starting point here is the understanding and the agreement that injuries are avoidable for the most part. 80 to 90% of injuries are absolutely avoidable. They're not the result of conditions. They're not the result of acts of God. They're the result of carelessness, not paying attention, taking chances, taking shortcuts, or what the injured worker knew was unsafe behavior. And maybe he said, well, just this one time I'm going to do it, but he paid a price. When you can convince them to change that behavior, you can convince them you will have, as a result, fewer injuries. Pretty simple, straight line on that. Let's talk about morale a little bit, because I think that's incredibly important as well. Remember that the basic question that any employee asks is, does this company that I work for care about safety? Is it a high priority? And do they care about my personal safety? That's the foundation to morale. Once you've convinced them of that, morale can be better, morale can be improved. You can do all sorts of things to affect morale, but you've got to have that foundation in place for people to believe in the company. And of course, better morale affects productivity, it affects turnover. You want to work for a company and you want the folks. The foundation for great morale is a great safety culture. Fewer injuries you have, the better people feel about the place that they work. I want to give you an example. One of our favorite clients is Loyola Marymount University. We hold safety achievement programs for them every month, and they've been a wonderful success. There are 6 different groups that we hold it for. But one group was the exception, and instead of injuries going down, they went up. Nobody could figure out why. Our approach was exactly the same. So we sat down with the whole group, not just the leaders, but the whole group, 60-some people, and started digging. Why do they continue to have injuries? Were the job tasks unsafe? What were the reasons behind it? And when we got done with a 45-minute session, what came out of it was this: they didn't think their managers cared about them. The managers never attended the safety meetings. They never attended the safety achievement meetings. They just felt like they were ignored and overlooked, and as a result, morale was impacted. Once we got the managers on board, what a difference. 2010, they had 13 injuries. 2011, we're mid-November, almost through the year, total injuries, 1. So it can change, and it can change dramatically once you get through to them. And then the third reason I cited was injuries and the terrible effect that they can have. The company I want to talk about is a landscaping company in Orange County that were doing all the right things, had a profitable business. Folks seemed to enjoy working there. The only area they weren't up to par on was safety. They just were lax. It wasn't as important as everything else. And as a result, they had far too many injuries, and the attitude that the folks took towards safety was not where it should be. One day, working in trenches, laying down irrigation lines, tragedy struck. Their company had a basic rule that any time you're in a trench and it's waist high, waist deep or above, they needed a second person there to monitor. But one of those areas, a little bit lax, easier to do it themselves, but nearby construction caused a cave-in and caused a loss of life. It took almost a year to get the confidence in the company back, and the company had to jump through hoops to do it. The lax behavior that they allowed led to this tragedy. I put this picture in there because we took it about a year later, and you can see that morale was back and the company was back on the right track, and in fact they did well. Their injury ratio started going down, but it took a long time, and it's not the result that you ever want to have in your company. So let's start with the 10 steps. Bill likes to call them secrets, but I don't think there'll be anything too secretive in this, but there will be steps. And the first one to me is compliance. And I start with this because sometimes it's the last step that companies take as well, thinking that if they're compliant in every way, they've really got a strong safety program. My point to you this morning is that's the starting point. That's really the kickoff spot. Compliance is the foundation to a safety program that's strong and a safety culture that embraces all your employees. I think of compliance the way a football team looks at a football field and the players that work for it. You've got to have your facility in order. You've got to have all hazards removed. It's got to be absolutely safe, the same way as a field has to be lined out. There have to be 100 yards. There have to be markers. The boundaries have to be right, and the field has to be in decent shape. The same way that a football team has to have players know the plays and have the equipment right, know what they're doing out there, you have to have your employees trained. They have to have the proper PPE. They have to be ready to do the job. But that's all. Now we go to the behavior. None of this is going to cause injuries the way behavior is. So you're Tom Brady. I know some of you would like to be with Tom Brady, but in this case you're playing Tom Brady on it. You're the quarterback that makes all these things happen. You're the one that is responsible for the behavior. You put the ball in play, you inspire the confidence, and it's up to you through your programs to convince the employees that you care about their safety. It is the highest priority in the company. When you encourage them and recognize them, their achievements, show them appreciation and show them rewards, you are demonstrating to them that you care about them, and that's what builds a safety culture. Before we go any further, I want you to do a quick self-assessment, and that is safety a core value in your company? Do an honest assessment, and if it isn't, what are the reasons it's not? And finally, do you have management support? Do you have support from the highest levels? Because that's crucial. We'll talk about that a little bit near the end of the presentation. Strong safety culture is the trademark of a good company. You don't find many companies out there that have really good, strong safety cultures that aren't also really good, strong companies. They go hand in hand. Step number 2, hazards identified and corrected. It's very important that you do this immediately. When someone lets you know that there's a hazard out there, you need to get on it, you need to change it. When an accident happens, you need to investigate it immediately. Solicit suggestions. If and when an injury happens, why did it happen? Is there something that could have been done to prevent it? Was there a machine guard that was not operating properly or that could be introduced, for example? Make hazards, any unsafe conditions out there an opportunity to demonstrate to your employees that you care. And of course, you get just the opposite effect when something happens, when there's a hazard reported, and you don't take action on it. You want a positive effect, you've got that opportunity, don't let it be a negative effect. The third step is the hiring message, and this is really where safety culture starts. When someone is hired, you must get across to them how high a priority is. It should be part of the interview, and it should be part of the hiring message for sure. What you want to stress to them is they have a responsibility not only to themselves, but to the company and to their fellow workers, that this is a company that values safety greatly, and they need to accept that responsibility right from the start. I would put them on a safety team from the day they start on the company with the understanding that they have responsibility to the other folks on that team, especially if you've got a safety achievement program where everybody on the team has to be safe in order to be eligible for any awards. So put them on a safety team right away, and then you'll get the other folks on the safety team looking out for them as well. Another idea is to bring them in after a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, some short period of time, and ask them not only how it's going, but do they feel like they're trained well for that job? Are there questions? Have there been any issues that have come up in the first couple of weeks that you can address and perhaps give them additional training on? For one thing, you're again showing them how important safety is by the simple act of calling them in and having a 2-minute discussion with them. And that's what you're trying to do. Keep in mind that 41% of injuries happen to folks in their first year at work. Those are the folks that need the most attention, obviously. The fourth step is accountability and consequences. Don't overlook this one. Don't let injuries happen in a vacuum. Discuss them openly. Great forum for that is at a safety meeting. Discuss the injuries and solicit suggestions on how they could have been prevented. If you've got a safety awards meeting and one group or department has been eliminated because of an injury, let's find out. Why did the injury happen? What could have been done to prevent it? You've got everybody's attention right there. What you don't want is, again, injuries to happen in the darkness and never be discussed. Injuries give you the opportunity to shine a light on them, to put them out in the open, and to let everybody go to school on it and learn from that injury ways to prevent it in the future. I'm also a believer in warnings. I think anytime there's a near miss or a first aid or an injury that's the result of behavior, a warning should be issued, and it's up to you whether you want 2, 3, 4 warnings, how your disciplinary flow goes. But it is important that that person who has acted unsafely, jeopardized his life, is somehow called to account on it, and that there is a consequence for that action. And again, we're talking about behavior. In the same way, unsafe behavior is contagious, safe behavior is contagious. The message you're putting across when you have consequences is injuries are not acceptable. Safety is too high a priority for us to simply accept that unsafe, careless, sloppy behavior is going to cause an injury. The other thing I'd keep in mind is the old adage that behavior that gets rewarded gets repeated. And the rewards don't have to be monetary. Recognition and appreciation are rewards for a job well done. When somebody knows that they're appreciated for doing the right thing, in this case for being safe, they tend to continue to be safe. Number 5, respond to injuries compassionately. Even if you don't believe that the injury was legitimate or the injury was caused by carelessness or stupid behavior or something absolutely unsafe, you must respond compassionately. Get prompt treatment to that person. I like the idea of accompanying the injured worker to a occupational medicine clinic as opposed to dropping him off. I like the idea of staying there, talking to the treating physician, finding out exactly what the findings are. And I know phone calls can accomplish the same thing, but remember, you're trying to send a message to your employees how much you care. And when you accompany them, stay with them until they've been examined, and you get the result and you talk to the physician afterwards, you're sending just the right message. Any injury should have a thorough investigation done and a write-up. Another thing I like is a follow-up phone call. When somebody suffered an injury and they're off work for even a couple of days, a phone call from you, how are you? How's the injury? Are you feeling better? Is very reassuring. When the injured worker sits at home for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and doesn't hear from anybody, your chances of them drifting, and perhaps drifting in the arms of Larry Parker or some attorney, increase greatly. And can't talk about the attorney or anything legal, but you can say, how are you doing? How's the injury? Are you feeling better?
Joe, also in your when you're dealing with accompanying workers and during the injury process, do you ever get involved in HIPAA-related issues?
Have not, but I know they exist. But
are you aware of any risks that there could be to HIPAA compliance by accompanying a worker? And describe, perhaps maybe this might help, if you describe what you mean by accompanying a worker. Are you talking about being in the examining room or making sure they get to the clinic safely? How would you recommend that?
Yeah, so somewhere in between. I want to drive the worker to the clinic. Don't necessarily have to be in the examining room. Don't want to infringe on their privacy. But I want to wait there for them, talk to the physician afterwards, and make sure the treatment's satisfactory and that the injured worker feels like the treatment's been satisfactory, and drive them home back to work on it. I don't want to infringe on their privacy, but I want them to know that I'm there with them, hand in hand, arm in arm, and in a supportive manner. And of course, you want to have a great modified duty program. The SB 899 put into effect a penalty if you don't have one, if you don't offer modified duty, and a bonus reduction if you do have a great plan. So certainly you want to have a modified duty plan. I want to give you the example of the Hilton Hotel. This is the large hotel at LAX, more than 1,000 employees, having a terrible time with injuries and couldn't figure out why. We implemented lots of different things to try to get at it. But I believe the biggest difference was they changed Ahmed clinics and they got very involved in every injury. Not only did they accompany the injured worker to the clinics, but they followed up immediately. The next day, they didn't call them in. They went to the housekeeper or staff that had been injured to ask how they were feeling, to see, make sure that they were okay and that they were all right to work again. That kind of involvement, that showing them that you care, makes a huge difference. So you can see what happened to the injuries over there. 63 was extraordinary, and there was some extra input there in that they were going through a union situation. So 63 is a bit of a bogus number, but to drop it from 63 to 9 tells you all you need to know about the commitment that they got from the employees towards safety and towards a safety culture. And it wasn't a fluke. They kept it down to 8 the next year. So again, they did lots of things, but changing clinics and getting more involved with the injured worker made a huge difference. This is perhaps the most controversial of the steps that I'm suggesting, a safety achievement program, and to me it should be the least controversial. It is an absolute positive everywhere we've put it in. If you do it right, it can be the engine to your whole safety program and your safety culture. I grant you that it has to be done right, and I'm going to give you some ideas on the right way to do it and what the pitfalls are. But a safety achievement program is wonderful to motivate, and all of us can use some motivation. You wouldn't think of having your salesman out there without commission, and yet we ask the folks that do the most physically challenging jobs, the most difficult jobs, to do them without any motivation. Safety is a way you can reward them, you can motivate them, and it's all for doing the right thing for the company. It gives you an opportunity to recognize them and recognize their achievements on it. And how many ways, how many opportunities do you have to do that? You want to get them participating at the meeting, and a safety achievement program, again, gives you that opportunity. Let me go back to recognition for a minute. There just aren't many ways that you can do that. Think of this. Physically demanding work, challenging work. Once a month, folks get together in a meeting and they are recognized for their achievement. They're not just recognized, but they come to the front of the room to the applause of all their fellow workers. Their hand is shaken. They're congratulated by you, by upper management. Their picture is taken, again, to all this applause, and it's all for doing the right things. There are not many ways you can give that kind of recognition and show that kind of appreciation without something like a safety achievement program. We like to do it every month so that you have all those opportunities throughout the year to do that. You get participation instead of a dull, boring safety meeting. You get them to participate. They feel great about themselves. It also gives you an opportunity for accountability, in that when there are injuries, we eliminate teams or departments from eligibility for awards. A great form of accountability. You get the positive peer pressure from the other folks on the team to act safely, to not do something dumb, to wear their PPE, to do all the right things. And of course, there's no better way to demonstrate, to show them that safety is your highest priority than a dynamic meeting where they look forward to it, they are involved in it, they are a part of it, and they're getting recognized for doing the right thing. And I use the Hilton again as an example. You can get creative with your programs. They don't have to be straight line and non-creative. At the Hilton, we came up with a program that was built around bowling for dollars. And the safe teams got to bowl. We set up a couple pins, each had a dollar amount on it, and depending on the pins that the representative knocked down, everybody on those safe teams earned that money. That was fun. You got everybody's interest. They're all looking at the person bowling. They're involved, they're engaged, and it helps make safety their own. As I said, your goal is to have the people that work at your company take responsibility for their safety. You've got a lot better chance to do that when they're involved in the safety program. They'll take responsibility if they believe in it and they're a part of it. And I also put this picture up here because I think pictures are a great thing to have from any meeting. So here's a couple of the components that I think make a successful safety achievement program. I like to put people on teams. You want that peer pressure, and teams are typically by department folks that work with each other, so that they can influence the other members of the team. I like awards that are motivational. I know it's nice to keep it limited, but $15 doesn't do the job. Our awards are $25, $50, $100, and depending on the size of the company and the superior performance, they can go up from there. You don't want to break the bank. We had one client that wanted a $2,000 top prize, and we couldn't work with them. It's too high. You don't want bad results from over-motivating people either. But $100, $150, $200 for superior performance is very legitimate. Not everybody should be eligible, by the way. Companies that put $5 or $10 in every employee's paycheck for being safe every month are throwing away their dollars, in my opinion. It quickly becomes an entitlement. You're not getting any extra performance for it. It's a lot better to take that budgetary money and spread it around and have different winners every month so that you can have some significant awards. You want your meetings to be interactive, dynamic as possible. For some of our meetings, we actually have a professional entertainer and a comedian out there just to make the meetings fun for everybody. But they definitely need to be interactive. It's one of the gripes I have against bingo or scratch cards or things like that. They're not interactive. Give recognition. Make that a big part of your meetings. Show appreciation. There's nothing better than shaking the hand of everybody on a team that's been safe, or a department that's been safe for 6 months or a year or longer than that. Shake their hand. Thank them for doing the right thing for your company. Show appreciation. And how many other ways do you have to show appreciation? It's one of the real challenges for human resources. Pretty difficult to do. A safety achievement program gives you that opportunity. You want to discourage non-reporting. To me, the biggest pitfall of a safety achievement, safety award, safety incentive program is the potential that people will get hurt but won't report their injuries because they don't want to lose awards either for themselves or for their team. Two ways to go after that. One is to address it and make sure that they understand that the purpose of the program is to get everybody thinking about safety and acting safely. It is not to cover up injuries. The second part of that is put a penalty in there for it. And what we do in our programs is if we find out that somebody's been hurt but they haven't reported it, that person and their team are eliminated from any consideration for 2 months. Instead of just 1 month, as is normally the case, they get a double penalty and they're out for 2 months. But you can come up with your own creative way, but you want to discourage non-reporting. And then finally, I think bingo is the wrong direction to go. You've got this wonderful opportunity to show appreciation and recognize achievement, and bingo does none of those things for you. I think it's a little insulting to your employees to say nothing's more important in this company. It's safety is the highest priority, and then you prove it with a bingo game. You've got to do better than that. You've got to make it interactive. And I'm not saying that bingo hasn't worked in the past and that it may not still work for some companies out there. I am saying that there's a better way to do it. And if you want a permanent safety culture, which we all do, bingo is not going to get you there.
Joe, as you move on to tip number 7, I want to bounce back to tip number 5 because we had a couple of questions coming in, being mindful of our audience, which is primarily human resources professionals. Certain things are really sensitive on an HR side, and when you talk about modified duty and any kind of return to work strategies, we're all very, very aware of the sensitivity of those discussions and how they're conducted and the issues that come up. And by the way, stepping outside of the safety side a little bit, I can't encourage people enough, and anybody that's talked to me over the last year has heard me say this, make sure that your job descriptions are updated and that you've done a thorough job analysis so that those essential functions are clearly defined, because when it comes time to discussing return to work, any kind of modified duties, you have the essential functions there clearly defined, and it'll make your life much easier as an HR professional. But could you discuss a little bit more about modified duty, any suggestions or strategies you have on this, and anything regarding if you've had experiences or concerns regarding penalties that could be applied for not properly offering modified work?
Yeah, I think that the penalty is a 10 or 15% increase in the benefits that have to be paid if you don't offer proper modified duty. In terms of what it should look like, of course, it depends entirely on the industry and the business that you're in. I think it should be work. It should be something that contributes to the company that isn't physically challenging. But I don't think it's a terrible thing if the work is fairly boring and the person would like to get back to doing their regular job. I would add, in terms of pay, that it should pay, while you have the right to pay slightly less, it should pay the same amount. I don't think you're gaining anything by docking the pay and doing that any less. But work should not be physically challenging, and it should make some contribution to the company. It shouldn't be counting paper clips or something absolutely stupid. Does that help?
Sure. Yeah. This is obviously something that from the HR side we deal with a lot. So it is sensitive. And if anybody has any follow-up questions on that and wants a little bit more information, by all means, just enter that question. And we did get several variations on that question.
Be happy to talk about it after this webinar as well and go into greater depth on that. Let's cover safety committee so that we can keep this thing rolling. Safety committee is important. I think it gives you another opportunity to involve members. My suggestion is that you bring folks in from all departments, rotate them maybe on a 6-month basis. I can't tell you how many safety committees I've observed where the folks leave the monthly meeting with assignments and walk in the next month with absolutely nothing done, no books cracked, nothing, no action taken since the previous meeting. So if you're leading the safety committee, make sure that whatever assignments you give, they honor them. They live up to it. It's really important to show that example, particularly when you're involving folks from all the departments. I think it's an opportunity, again, to demonstrate and illustrate to the folks on the floor, the folks with the toughest jobs, how much you care about safety, that they're involved in it, and you want their input, and then they carry the message back to the folks on the floor. Make it a real an honor and a responsibility. A word on safety training and meetings. Don't look at these as CYA, that's something that has to be done. Look at them as an opportunity to get through and do more than just the basics. The first thing I'd say is hold them as scheduled. If you have a training scheduled and you keep postponing it for productivity issues or back order issues or things like that, you're countering your message of how important safety is by saying, yeah, your safety is the most important thing to us. Oh, but we've got to put it off because we've got a back order situation. Hold them as scheduled as much as you possibly can. Training, get a bilingual communicator. If your workforce is primarily Hispanic, make sure somebody's communicating with them. Not as good to have an English speaker and then have somebody up there translating. If you can get a dynamic meeting leader that goes back and forth and incorporates both languages, you get so much more for it. And I would also say on the terms of regular safety meetings, not trainings, keep them short, one topic, make them interactive. Training the same message, make them interactive, get your folks involved in the training. It probably pays to get somebody from the outside to do trainings if the people inside are not comfortable with it and are not in any way dynamic. Getting the message across in terms of a safety training meeting is the most important thing, so whatever that takes. And by the way, it's not a bad idea to take pictures from your training meetings. Let folks see themselves in action. Always great to reinforce that. Make sure your handouts are topical, and again, interactive and short and sweet. I say safety with personality, but you want to get the folks involved. And I put this picture up there to illustrate that this is obviously not a dull, repetitious, and boring safety meeting. You can see that the folks are involved, they're paying attention. The last thing you want is for someone to come to a safety training or safety meeting and flip the switch, tuned out. They're thinking about problems at home or paying bills or what they're going to do that evening. You want them engaged, and if it takes humor, God bless them. And then finally, and this is a little bit of a reiteration to things we've been saying all along. Remember that the folks that work for you have heard the message, be safe, everywhere they've worked. Every company they've worked for has said, we really care about your safety, but not every company has backed that up. So they tend to tune it out a little bit. And no matter how many times you say it and how many ways you say it, words aren't as powerful as actions. What you've got to focus on is actions. I call them proof statements. Everything you do is evaluated by the people that work for you. It is the first measurement that they make of the company. Does this company care about my safety? How high a priority is safety to this company? And then everything that follows that needs to demonstrate that. Demonstration, not words. Action, not words. You've got to be out there letting them know everything we've talked about, all the steps are actions that you take that prove to them, they're proof statements, how much you care. If you keep that one basic question in mind, it can be your guide. Does the company or organization I work for care about my personal safety? How high a priority is my safety to them? Here's a wonderful example. When we started working with this company, morale was lousy. And last year they asked me to give this to the owners. By the way, in the last 2 years, they've had a total of 1 injury on it. So here's a company that really gets it. And what a wonderful thing for the ownership of a company, I think 60 employees, something like that, to receive that kind of present and have that kind of safety culture that's ingrained there. Number 9 is high visibility. Make your program as visible as you possibly can. Pictures help with that visibility. If you've got a newsletter, put an article in every month about safety and the safety record and the safety achievements of different departments. Make sure that the results are announced to everybody. Make sure that they all know how great a job the company and the workers are doing in terms of safety. And we have big award boards that we put into companies. It's a great idea. Let everybody see, make it visible that they're doing a great job. Again, pictures make it real. Here's a picture we took from Pepperdine. Nothing unusual except that folks get to see themselves and know that they were winners and get that nice reinforcement, one of the things you're trying to accomplish. And then finally, and I know that this is one of the toughest, you've got to get management buy-in. It is the ultimate proof statement to your employees, no matter how much you tell them and how much you demonstrate. If management isn't part of the solution, if management isn't on board, it makes it a lot more difficult. And I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. Sincerity matters. I don't want management participating when they're not really there. I don't want management to attend an award meeting if they're going to be on their BlackBerry the whole time or they're tuned out. the folks are looking to upper management to see how sincere they are, to see how involved they are. So my advice or suggestion, if you're not getting management buy-in, upper management buy-in, is to sit down and have a conversation with them. Let them know how important safety culture is, and maybe you want to approach it from a cost standpoint. Let them know how much money they can save if you reduce injuries down to an absolute minimum. But one way or another, find a way to get them involved. Supervisor support is absolutely crucial. You've got to have your supervisors understand that their role is significant, and they've got to support that. And then the final message is to you that you need to get as involved as you possibly can. Don't legislate from your office. And I think anybody that's tuned into this webinar doesn't have that attitude. I know that you're all proactive out there. Stay proactive, get involved. And I want to show you an example of management support. This is the owner of a meat packing company in Vernon with, I think, 150 employees or something like that. And there can be no question. And this is a long-term employee, and he asked if I take his picture with him, and again, we framed it and gave it to him. But what a wonderful message to the employees on just how much he cares. I want to leave a little time for questions. So the last 3 slides are simply recaps that you can all get from the website of the 10 steps that we talked about today. Our services as a company, again, we review all aspects of your current program. We provide consultation and recommendations on how to strengthen it. Depending on what you want, we can also audit your company for compliance, make sure you're in compliance on everything, and we'll do a facility audit. For some clients, we customize a safety achievement program. You manage it or we manage it. That's your call on that. And many cases, we're the managers, and we come out every month and take responsibility for it with you. And then we provide the typical safety training meeting and ergonomic evaluations. And then the final slide is just our contact information, which is there for you. We'd love to hear from you, and if we can help in any way, it would be our pleasure to do so in conjunction with the employers group.
You know, anytime we do the webinars or any kind of training or program that we offer to our members and to the public in general, we always look for takeaways. And I think obviously the 10 steps that we're looking at right now, or we just looked at, provide a really, really useful takeaway for everybody. And a couple things stand out, and I thought just by way of summary might be worth pointing out. One is for everybody in HR, so go and look at your employee handbook, and how many of you have some kind of a statement somewhere in your handbook or somewhere in your lobby that says our employees are our most valuable asset? And then ask yourself, is that true? Is that really what we're doing? And I think, Joe, when you talk about how everybody's heard this all before on the safety side, it really, I think that resonates a lot with HR. So often we're the mouthpieces of what we would like to be, of this ideal culture that should exist within an organization. But what you've provided for us here is some really, really useful steps for building that safety culture. And my second takeaway that I think is fascinating is go back over the slides, look at the 10 steps, and then add up how much time this really takes to do these things. It's so minimal. It really does not take a lot. We're not talking about changing the culture of the organization. We're talking about establishing that safety culture.
Great point.
And really, I started to do the math, and then I kind of lost track of it. But I mean, we're looking at somewhere from an hour to 2 hours a month probably that really needs to be put into this to make this effective. So these things are really, really doable, and I think for everybody that's participated in the webinar today, most of whom are on the HR side, these are really some things that we can walk out today and start putting into place. So I want to thank everybody for their participation and for the questions that came up. And for being part of this. If you have any other questions you want to throw out in the last couple of minutes here, please do. A reminder also, I know some people joined after we'd already started and may have missed a couple of the early slides. Do get back onto our website probably by the end of this week, if not by Monday, and you'll find this program in its entirety available to you to view or to download. So if you did miss any, that is available to you. Please don't hesitate to contact Joe or Employers Group for any follow-up information. And the slides, while they're not available right now, we don't have them posted yet. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, we will have them posted on the website as quickly as possible. It just takes us a day or two to get that done. So we will work on that. So the entire program will be available. And similarly, as I mentioned, the HRCI certificate will be sent out to everybody. Should be early next week as well. So you have a couple of really nice things to look forward to as you head towards Thanksgiving to follow up on safety. Thank you, Joe, for a really, really informative program and I think some really useful information for our members. Thank you for everybody who dialed in and participated. Please don't hesitate to follow up with any questions. We'll stay online here for a little bit longer if you do have any questions you want to send over to us. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.